Hey, work from homers, Adam Schrader here. We love bringing you this podcast, and thousands of you have proven that it's been helpful for you. But since time and online storage space aren't free, Naresh and I wanted to come to you personally to ask for your financial support through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/workfromhomeshow and help support the show. And we appreciate your support at any amount you choose. That's patreon.com/workfromhomeshow. Thanks for your support. Let's get to the show.
Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Work From Home Show. It's a brand new year. I'm Naresh with Adam Schrader. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. Thank you for joining us. It is season 3. Wow, can you believe it, Adam? Season 3, third year.
Season 3 of our 6-episode podcast.
Yeah, if you remember, if you go back and listen to episode 1, which was part of season 1, we thought this was going to be a 6-episode podcast and we would just keep it up on the internet forever. And here we are, we keep going, we get better and better guests. We just got paid on our first sponsorship deal. How about that, Adam?
Hey, podcast making money now.
Podcast making money. And by the way, we really do appreciate your support on Patreon. So if you go to workfromhomeshow.com, you'll see a link to Patreon, and we would appreciate any donation or any amount of money. You'll see a button on the upper left-hand corner that says support us on Patreon. So we'd greatly appreciate that. But with that being said, Adam, if you remember last year for season 2, episode 1, we started that season out by talking about keys to happiness, because it's a new year, right? It's a new year, and I don't need to go over what I think of the holidays or the new year. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but there are still valuable nuggets. Every day is a new year to me. Let's put it that way. Every day is a new year. There's no need to wait until the next calendar to start something new. But I want to go over, I believe we talked about 3 or 4 keys to success or to happiness last year. It was actually 4 keys to happiness. Do you remember what they were, Adam?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
That was a long time ago.
Number 1 had to do with money. Number 1 and 2, number 1 had to do with money. None of these are in order of importance, but the first one had to do with money. Do you remember how much money a person needs to make to reach the peak point of happiness? Do you remember that number?
Wasn't it like 90 or something like that?
It was $95,000. So we'll round up because inflation hit like crazy in 2021. So let's just round up to $100,000. And that's per person. So if you're like you and your wife, it would be 200,000. It would be 100,000 each, so $200,000. Or one person could make all that $200,000. So this is again based on research, various studies that found that the utility after the $200,000 a year, the utility just levels off. So if you're making $50,000 and you left during the Great Resignation to take a job that paid you $70,000. You're like one of the happiest people out there, because that's a huge jump, right? It's a $20,000 jump. But if you're going from $500,000 to a job that pays $520,000, they found that the utility is actually extremely, extremely marginal. Maybe there's even no utility at all. And once you reach a certain income level, like let's say the top 0.1%, the utility actually goes down. It's like the more you make, the unhappier you get. It's strange. But it also makes sense if you just take a look at why so many so many decamillionaires or even billionaires are unhappy, or some of them even commit suicide. So you remember that, Adam? Money
Yep.
was number one. Number two, I'll give you some clues. Number two and three are related. So number two, they have to do with friendships. Do you remember what about friendships creates happiness?
Don't we need like 5 friends or something like that? Or was that an episode we?
That was an episode. So that was actually so we did an episode with the man who invented the Dunbar number. You remember that? And we're going to be playing that episode later this season. So stay tuned for that episode. And he talked about it, and it was not 5 people. I believe it was 100, somewhere between 115 to 130.
But you only need like 5 close friends or something like that.
I don't remember if he talked about you know what, let's play that episode soon. We'll play that episode soon, and we can take a listen to it again. But this was a Harvard study that found that number two, the quality of your friendships give you happiness, right? The quality. So it's not enough to know a bunch of people, but they're low quality. You know, you don't hang out with them. You can't just call them on the phone, talk to them. It should be they should be close friends who you can just visit their house whenever you want and hang out and whatever it is. And number three, which is equally important, if not more important, is quantity. And the reason why quantity, we talked about that. I highly recommend people go back and listen to season 2, episode 1. The reason why quality is important, Adam, so we're in a pandemic and the elderly seem to be most at risk. So let's say you're an 80 or 85-year-old person. Why would quantity of friends be important if you're, let's say, 85 years old? And this is just an example.
When they die off.
Exactly. So if you only have 5 friends and 4 of them died during the pandemic, then how do you think you're going to feel? And it's not just friends. A friend can be a family member too. It can be your spouse. It can be your sibling. It can be your cousin. It can be a parent. So those were 2 and 3. It was quantity of friendships and quality of friendships. Number 4 was exercise, because studies have shown that exercise, moving the body, getting the heart pumping, especially outside and with fresh air, natural sunlight, leads to a happier brain. Remember that one, Adam?
No, I don't.
No, you don't. Okay. But
I didn't exercise enough this year.
I made it a priority. So I took exercising to an all new level. And when you say this year, I mean
2021. I did not exercise enough.
Yeah, after I started taking over childcare duties, I actually exercised more. I did more kettlebells with my child in my arms. He was my kettlebell. I also took a lot of walk. We're talking 2 to 4 miles. It was generally 2 to 3 miles a day, but there were some days when I was like, you know what, the weather's nice. I don't have much work to do. Let's just keep walking. We want a bunch of walks, ton of pull-ups, some runs here and there. So exercise is number 4. And I'm adding number 5 because we didn't have this last year. We did not have it. And I have come to realize that we should add a number 5 as far as 5 keys to happiness go. Number 5, and all this is based on scientific research. You can Google these reasons, find various studies and articles about them. But number 5, which I know many people are not going to agree with, but I'm just regurgitating what the data, what the studies show. So Adam, did you know that being a religious person and being a religious person and, let's say, going to church or whatever your place of worship is, extends your life? Were you aware of that?
I was not.
You were not aware of that. And I actually think, because I've read these studies that show that religious people live longer. And of course, the religious fanatics will say, oh, it's because God loves them. But
helps with the friendships.
Exactly. There you have it. So it ties into 2 and 3, because a place of worship, or just being religious in general, You're going to attract other like-minded people into your life and find that commonality. And as you get older, it's those types of interests and hobbies that will take up a decent portion of your time. So that's why I think religion, spirituality, it makes you a happier person mentally, but it also makes you happier simply because you have other people to do it with. You go to a place of work. You can go to, I mean, I personally, I go every Sunday to a local temple, and it's now a community I've built. I don't want to say I've built it, but there is this community that I've joined, and we talk about all sorts of things, but we're friends because we share that commonality, that interest to religion. And these are people of all ages. So what do you have to say about that, Adam?
I mean, it makes sense. It's also good for you just to have a wide range of people you're friends with, age-wise. I mean, I enjoy hanging out with the elderly in our congregation, and I enjoy helping out with youth group stuff too. I mean, it's nice to know people in various age ranges.
It absolutely is. So you do go to church or a congregation?
We haven't been much since the pandemic, but prior to that, we were going pretty regularly.
Got it. Well, if you just do a simple Google search on religion leading to a longer life, you'll see a ton of research studies that people who regularly attend religious services live approximately 4 years longer than average. Okay, so we talked about the other reasons, but this is a reason that is often overlooked because it is look, it's not controversial to say, hey, exercise or make friends. But to say, hey, go to a religious congregation, that can be somewhat controversial because there are people who are very, very anti-religion. And I'm just going purely based off of the research that shows that people with religious affiliations live longer by up to 4 years. And I don't know if you saw, but Adam, the average lifespan is declining.
Yes, it is.
Quite rapidly. It went from about 79 and a half in 2019 before the pandemic, and now it's below 78 years old, below 78 years old. So I think this is going to be temporary for another year or so. But hey, any tip we can give you on the work from home show to be happier and to live longer, we're game. You should be all ears.
Yep. Yeah, it's well, I mean, and in fairness, I mean, like you said, it's probably a blip just because a large quantity of people died comparatively. Like more young, I would assume, I mean, I haven't looked at any data, but I would assume that the coronavirus killed more like 50 and 60-year-olds than usually die due to
Absolutely
diseases in any given year.
Diseases or even so surprising car accidents, car fatalities are up. So you would think, oh, people are working from home. No. They're still driving. They might be working from home, but they're still driving around. And
that might actually be because people weren't flying, so they were taking car trips.
That could be a reason. What I saw for the reasoning behind this, I saw was there's a lot more impairment behind the wheel. So there are people who are drinking more and doing more drugs. So this has become a huge problem. The opioid problem and the fentanyl overdoses, as well as just being on fentanyl, and then of course the recreational drug use. So there's been more of that, and there's been a lot more reckless driving because apparently when the streets were more empty, people decided, oh, I can be more reckless because there aren't as many people driving. And so you had that's what I read, that people just became more reckless. It's weird how that works. Because I was expecting auto fatalities to plummet, and they reached like a high over a certain time scale. It was like a 10-year high for 2020, it was like a 10-year high, and that just shocked me. So, but that does make sense if you think about it. I remember when I was in high school, we used to go on like empty uh roads, like new roads that nobody knew about, and we would go 120,
Yep.
130. And one time, yeah, like we had a close call. There was no one on the road. It was just us, and we stopped doing things after that because we said, all right, you hit 130 once in your life, and that's enough.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I think that's what most or many men who turn 16 or 17 do.
Yeah, I think it was one of my first like 2 or 3 days of driving. I did that,
Oh, wow.
like having a license.
I hit a car I think the first day I drove completely on my own when I was 16. Fortunately, it was like no dent, no scratch, no nothing. But that taught me, okay, I should leave space in between my car and the car in front of me.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yep. So if you have any questions about this, want to share your thoughts, hello at workfromhomeshow.com. Hello at workfromhomeshow.com. Adam, on our last episode, we touched a good deal on staying at home and getting work done. We've had a lot of feedback about that episode because people were blown away. Like, this man has 4 kids, he homeschools them, and he does web design, and he sells real estate. This other man, he's got 1 kid who's, less than 2 years old, and the kid plays by himself, and he's on Zoom meetings getting work done and doing other work. So let's talk a little bit more about that because I'm more interested about you. It's having 4 kids is a lot harder than having 1 kid. But before I get to you, I want to just really drill down and share what I did with 1 kid. So I'm going to share my kid's schedule, and then we can go from there. So that's number one. You've got to build out a schedule. Absolutely must build out a schedule, because if you give the children license, look, I'm all for freedom. Don't get me wrong. I'm very pro freedom when it comes to almost anything. But when it comes to a 1-year-old, they're not ready to be free yet. They're not. And you cannot let them dictate when to sleep, when to eat, because their brain's not fully developed. So what happens is if you dictate when they sleep, they get cranky and they're not able to go to sleep, even though they're really tired. Or they get super hungry, and if you wait too long, they get so hungry that they get cranky and crying, and they end up not eating anything. So you need to build out a schedule so that you prevent these problems of crankiness from happening. So the way I do it, number one, I sleep train my kid. It took 6 months to sleep train him because his entire first year he was not sleep trained. So I sleep trained him so that I could literally just throw him in the crib and he would go to sleep. That helps him, and it also helps me because I get a full night's sleep. If you don't get a full night's sleep, everything becomes difficult. Working, walking, feet, everything. You're just sleepwalking all day. So I sleep trained him. He wakes up around 6:45 every morning, and he knows when he wakes up that no one's going to come get him until there's daylight. So if it's still dark, he'll just hang out in his crib by himself and just mess around. No crying, no nothing. He just sits there until he sees daylight. Then he knows someone's going to come and get him. So that person's usually me. Give him a full, nice bottle of milk with a bunch of rice cereal to start the day. And then he usually poops after that. So after poops, after showers, kids like my son's age, they get hungry again. So he poops, then I feed him a nice solid. It could be either peanut butter, it could be pizza, it could be pureed. We weaned off the pureed food, but that's what it was for a long time. Just some kind of regular adult type of food. After he's done eating that, we top it off with some snacks. So like cereal, like Lucky Charms or Cheerios, and then nuts, pistachios, those types of things, which are very healthy. maybe some fruits. So now he's very well fed. He's well fed. He's off the high chair. I put him down. He runs all around our bottom floor. Not the entire bottom floor, but let's say our living room. He's got his toys, and for the next 2.5 hours, he can literally just play by himself. He's well fed. He pooped. He's well rested. He just runs around, plays by himself. That's when Daddy can get on his computer and get work done, record some podcasts, do some Christian media and marketing work, do whatever that needs to be done. Now, for my phone calls, if I have a phone call, so I know you have a lot of phone calls, I actually prefer, instead of him running around and making noise, I mean, I do some phone calls with him running around, but I prefer to put him in the stroller and to go for a walk and have my calls on my headset while I'm walking. I prefer that because he's completely silent during our walks. He's just in the stroller and just looking around. He loves the outdoors. And I'm able to call my clients, talk to them on the phone, sell some properties, get some new business, etc. They have no idea that I'm at a park or that I'm with my son. They have no clue. So that's how I'm able to knock those out. So let's say we go for a walk. Usually those last about an hour to an hour and a half. We live right next to the park.
You walk for an hour and a half?
Yes, sir. I told you I exercise all of 2021, almost every day. So it's, yeah. And we walk to the park. We don't drive there. We walk and walk back. So after that, we come back and I'm done with my calls. Time for the milk again. So give him the milk, full bottle, change his diaper, and then it's nap time. So that's around noon. It's nap time. And guess what? Daddy did some nice work in the morning. So Daddy gets a nap as well. So usually I take a nap maybe for an hour and a half. He sleeps for about 2.5 hours. So it's nap time. And then I wake up fully recharged and refreshed again. He wakes up fully recharged and refreshed. And then the cycle repeats itself once again. So he wakes up from his nap and we basically do it all over again, minus the walk, because his mother most likely comes home shortly after that and she'll spend time with him. But that's how I trained my kid. That's how I'm able to get my work done. And we do have a part-time nanny. So unlike you who did it all yourself, we have an awesome nanny who comes 4 hours a week. She cooks for us. She does our laundry, his laundry, cleans up around the house. Let's just say she does a lot of stuff during that 4 hours. So that certainly helps. And when she comes, I can schedule any Zoom meetings, video meetings, or if I need to go out of the house, I can do that, go run some errands or whatever. So it's really, folks, it's really not that difficult. It's really not, because again, I keep hearing from men and women, oh, how are you able to do all this? And it's actually it was actually easier than before when I was like kind of single or living that bachelor life. I have proper structure in my schedule. And at night, our kid goes to sleep by 7:15, maybe 7:30. So that's basically 2 hours that my wife and I have to ourselves to cook, to eat dinner together, to watch movies. We watch something almost every night, 7 days a week. If we don't have anything to do that night, we're watching Netflix or Prime or something. So it's worked out extremely well. I know some families, some parents who didn't do any of this stuff, and it's a nightmare. They can't even turn on the TV. They don't get any time to themselves. It's just a jungle in their homes. And look, that's how it was in our home during the first year, quite frankly, because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. So now, Adam, I want to hear with 4 kids, and your kids are older now, but so let's just assume, let's take a time warp back to 2015, 2016. So let's say 2015, 2016. How did you do all this pretty much on your own with 4 kids and homeschooling them?
I mean, well, first off, 2015, 2016, Isaac was in kindergarten or first grade. That's like 45 minutes a day.
But you had 3 other kids.
Well, yeah. I mean,
You had diapers to change. You had,
I mean, the good part then was I wasn't doing any phone-based stuff. It was all like email or computer and
web-based. Yeah.
yeah. And so I didn't have to do any real face-to-face interactions with people. So I mean, that part made it easy.
But did you just have all four kids? Because like when you have a 1 year, you had two twins who were 1 year old, right?
Yeah.
Or 1 to 2 years old. So were like the older kids watching them, or did you just put them all in a game room and then you were on a desk in your computer in the game room? And
primarily I would just work because we talked about how much work you actually have to do. Primarily I would work during naps or after bedtime. During the day I would have them do their own thing too. They would do their stuff and I would do my thing at times. So I mean, it wasn't really. I mean, it was all about the schedule, like you were talking about.
How did you have your two twins who were 2 years old do their own thing?
Oh, that we just had. I mean, when they were awake, I mean, at the time they were still taking like 2-3 hour naps, something like that, like 2 or 3 hour naps, not 2 3-hour naps.
Yeah.
And so with that, I mean, you can't do a ton when they're newborns, and that part was a little rough, but we would just, I mean, like we talked about, you don't need to work that many hours in a day, so I would just do my thing, and then when Erin got home, she'd watch the kids for a little bit, and I'd finish up any work I needed to get done, and then I would work. Erin usually needs time in the evenings to decompress, and during that time, she doesn't want anybody around her, so I would let her do her thing for a while, and I would go into my office and finish up any work that needed to be finished, and then we would get together and hang out after that.
Okay, well, so when your twins were first born, they were born in 2014, was it, or 2015?
Yep, into 2014.
Yeah, December 2014, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they're born in December 2014. So, that was exactly 7 years ago.
Yep.
January 2015 rolls around. How did you make it through January and February 2015 where you had two twins newborn? You know how difficult those first 2 months are. And having I'm assuming your son was in first grade by that point and you were homeschooling him, and then you had another son who was pre-K?
Yeah, he was 2 and 2 or 3 months. He would have been like 2 and a quarter at that point.
Okay, so not even pre-K. He was still itty bitty.
Yeah.
So how did you get through that time period, and did you do any work? Because the point of this is not just how did you get your work done. We've got people listening to this who may not even work, and they're like, oh, 4 kids sounds like a nightmare. And I don't even have any work to do.
Yeah. That time frame is...
You just don't even remember.
That's just a blur.
Yeah.
That's
how it is for most parents. Like, you go through those first 2 months, and then you just, like, completely forget about it until you have a grandkid.
Yeah, I don't really know a good answer to that, honestly. We just kind of did it.
Yeah. Even when our son was born 2 years ago, it was a blur because it was a bunch of sleepless nights. It was literally just surviving everybody, the baby, the mom, the dad, and we had my mother-in-law living with us too. So she at least gave us a break, and she would take care of the kid. So that was easier. But if we had to do it ourselves, I mean, we just didn't know. We're much more prepared for the second kid. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
But
1 to 2 was like barely even a speed bump.
yeah, that's what I hear from most parents. 1 to 2, barely a speed bump. So okay, so that's a blur. You just make it. You just survive.
Yep.
That's your word of advice. You're just gonna get through.
Yep. You just gotta keep working.
Okay, and then now all your kids, your youngest kids are 7.
Yep.
Now, is it a breeze because they just do their own work? Like you give them a lesson. You said 45 minutes a day. You give them their lesson, or each kid their lesson. The twins are probably together, so you give them one lesson. So you do 3 lessons, 45 minutes a day, and then you get the rest of the day. You're basically putting in 2.5 hours, let's say 3 hours with the kids, and then boom, they can make their own lunches. They can do their own homework. They can take care of themselves. Is that how it is now?
So now, first off, I don't schedule any work before 11 unless I have to. Like if I'm doing a podcast interview or something like that. So I would say 4 days out of the week, I don't start until 11. And so I tell the kids school starts at 9. And from 9 to, let's just call it 10:30, that's when I'm actively teaching them. And so from 9 to 10:30, I'm actively teaching. And then they all have independent work that they can do by themselves without needing me. Or I'll, give them I'll teach them math, but I won't actually I'll just assign them their work and say, you need to do this after that. So like homework, I guess you'd call that. And then I usually work like 11 to 12 or 11 to 12:30, something like that. And then I tell them to make lunch. I'll see. There's a few things that like I'll actually make for them for lunch and do myself. But most days it's, make a sandwich, or they'll have like cheese and crackers with peanut butter or something like that for lunch. So they make their own lunch probably 3 to 4 days out of the week. And then we still have them do rest time. And so usually at like 1:45, I'll send them up to rest, or 1:30, 1:45. Send them up to rest for like an hour 15. And during that time, I do some more work. And then they get up and, maybe I'll have a little bit more teaching time with the kids. And then by 3:30 or so, we're done with school and they can do whatever they want. And while I'm working in the morning, if they finish their stuff, they just play. During their rest time, they have like their iPods that have like books on tape on them that they listen to. My older kids have like a history book on tape that they listen to during that. So that's educational. I also bought them a little like circuit thing so they can build circuits and make it do, like a little radio or buzz whenever they push a button or something like that. So they can do some, science-y mechanical stuff in that regard. So even during rest, they're doing some form of schooling. Or if they're assigned like a book to read, they'll read during the rest time. And then they have their activities in the afternoon. So, I've got, I just carve out during the day about 2.5 or 3 hours for me to work. And then I do my emails in the evenings and hang out with Aaron.
You said on the last episode you would level of difficulty 3 out of 10. So 10 being the most difficult. And based on what you just said, it sounds pretty simple. Now, as far as lunch goes, if the oldest is cooking lunch, or does the oldest cook lunch for everybody else, or do you usually help out with lunch?
Like when they're making sandwiches and stuff, they can all make their own. But the funny thing is, it's actually Elliot, the second born, who will, like if they're making macaroni and cheese or something like that, he usually makes that, not Isaac, the older one, because our second born is more into cooking. And so with that, like if they're going to make macaroni and cheese, they can do everything except, I move the pot and I strain through the colander and everything like that.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to
he can reach the stove, he's tall enough?
We have a step.
Okay.
So, he'll stir the noodles, and I've worked with him, and, we obviously, the first few times we sat with him and made sure he could do everything safely, but, they can stir the noodles, they check the noodles, they come and tell me that it's ready to be strained, I'll go strain it, and then they'll melt the butter in it, a lot of times I pour the milk just so they don't accidentally dump a ton in, because that's happened before. But then they, pour the fake cheese stuff on it and mix it all together. And then oftentimes I'll serve it so that we can get 4 relatively even servings out of it.
Okay. And do you ever ask the older children to teach the younger children, or the older child to teach the younger children?
No.
Never. So there's no teaching going on?
No. I mean, the twins will listen in whenever I'm teaching Isaac, and they've definitely sat through stuff that's over their head. Like we were doing, we did some, not Khan Academy, but something similar to Khan Academy, some online school. I don't remember which one it was. And they had like a free history class, and it was way above their heads. Because it was like the history of Europe being taught by a professor from like the University of Virginia.
Was it Coursera?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh yeah, that's meant for college kids.
Yeah. So they were, but I mean, they were interested. Isaac is really into history. Like he loves history. And so, I had him listening to that, and, I don't expect them to remember everything, but, they're interested in it. I'll also have them, we have like the masterclass subscription, and so they watch the masterclass on like the guy who ran the International Space Station. So they'll watch those, and just anything they're interested in. So, but I mean, they've definitely watched stuff that's over their head, but that's how you grow, as you get challenged.
When your twins were younger, let's say that 2-year-old again, how did you deal with tantrum throwing? I mean, you have 4 boys. I'm sure they were fighting all the time, beating the shit out of each other, tantrums, not sharing. Did that just not happen much, or how did you deal with it?
They didn't mess with each other much. I mean, we nipped that in the bud pretty quick. We didn't like spank or anything, but we used timeouts. We'd talk to them, and we would just treat them like, we expected them to not do it. And so, I mean, they'll pick on each other some, but it's mostly verbally. And so we talked to them about that, but they've never really, I could probably count on one time the number of times they've hit each other. And even then, usually it's not like a full-on rearing back and punching them.
Wow. I think a lot of parents listening to that would be like, wow, you're lucky parents.
we treat our kids as if they're human beings who are capable of making good decisions. So we treat them that way, and it's kind of like we'll treat you and give you leniency unless you show us that you need us to not to.
Well, how about just the crying and the whining? Did they just never cry or whine? I'm talking about okay, your twins when they were 2, and then you had these other 2 older kids.
I mean, cry about what?
2-year-olds cry for the most random things, don't they? I mean, if you don't give them a hug, they'll cry. If you don't give them a cookie or a chip, they'll cry, right? So,
I mean,
no, there was no crying in your house?
I mean, there was some, but it wasn't anything consistent or bad.
Or if they want attention from mommy or daddy, they'll cry, won't they?
Well, I mean, they had their brothers to play with, and their brothers played with them happily. So, I mean, and you also have to remember they had each other, and they'll play with each other forever.
Interesting.
I think it's all about expectations.
I think it is too. I've learned a lot from this, and again, I think most people who don't have children are learning a lot from this, and even people who have only one child like me are learning a lot from this. And this is just never talked about, but you're hearing it here on the Work From Home Show. So, Adam, any final thoughts you want to share before we sign off on this New Year's Season 3, Episode 1?
I think it's going to be a good year. I think I'm hoping we're going to Belize in February, so looking forward to that.
I remember that. We interviewed somebody in...
Yeah, I need to reach out to him and see where I need to go, because we're at the point where we need to start booking places to stay.
Yeah, we'll have that episode coming out later this season as well. It's a guy who created a work from home resort, per se, a multifamily resort for work from homers, somewhat meant for younger folks, but he said there are some older people who go there as well. So, yeah, reach out to him. And our listeners, you can reach out to us. Visit workfromhomeshow.com. Our email is hello@workfromhomeshow.com. Get on our mailing list, and we will send you a free copy of my book, 50 Shades of Marketing. Follow us on social media. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the episode, Patreon. We appreciate your contributions. If you go to workfromhomeshow.com, you'll see a Patreon button on the upper left-hand corner. We would greatly appreciate your donation or your contribution. Hello@workfromhomeshow.com. Once again, if you have any questions, we're on social media. Leave us a review on whatever podcasting platform you use. And until next week, keep on working from home.